The morning sky above New York City shimmered like heated glass before tearing apart entirely. What emerged defied every law of physics humanity thought they understood. Massive crystalline structures, each the size of a city block, descended through the dimensional rift with impossible grace. They didn't fall, they simply existed where they chose to exist. Commander Marcus Rodriguez watched from the Emergency Command Center as military satellites went dark one by one. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply ceased to function, as if the very concept of human technology had been politely declined by reality itself. "Sir, we're getting reports from Moscow, Tokyo, London, they're everywhere," Lieutenant Emma Foster's voice cracked as she read the incoming transmissions. 17 major cities worldwide. No hostile actions detected, but our entire defense grid is offline. The beings that emerged from the crystalline ships moved like liquid mercury given form and purpose. They stood 12 feet tall, their bodies constantly shifting between solid matter and pure energy. When they walked, the ground didn't crack under their weight, instead, it seemed to welcome them, grass growing greener in their footsteps. Dr. Helen Voss, the world's leading xenobiologist, pressed her face against the observation window. "They're not just advanced," she whispered. "They're operating on principles we haven't even theorized. Look at how they interact with matter itself." The aliens, though that term seemed inadequate, had positioned themselves in perfect formation around the globe. Not threatening, not defensive, simply present. When military forces approached, weapons simply stopped working. Not jammed, not disabled, they retained their form but lost their function, as if the concept of harm had been gently removed from their existence. President Sarah Mitchell convened an emergency session with world leaders. The unanimous conclusion was both humbling and terrifying. Humanity had encountered beings so far beyond their understanding that traditional concepts of conflict or negotiation seemed irrelevant. "They're not conquering us," General Patricia Hayes observed grimly. "They're not even acknowledging us as a threat. We're like ants trying to comprehend architects." As the first day ended, the aliens remained motionless in their positions, their crystalline ships casting impossible shadows that seemed to bend light around them rather than block it. No communication attempts had succeeded, no weapons had functioned, and no scientific instruments could properly analyze what they were observing. Humanity realized they weren't facing an invasion in any traditional sense. They were witnessing the arrival of beings so incomprehensibly advanced that the very rules of reality appeared to be suggestions rather than laws. The question wasn't whether humanity could fight back, it was whether these entities even recognized humans as sentient life worth acknowledging. The age of human dominance on Earth had ended not with violence, but with the simple, overwhelming presence of something infinitely greater. 3 days had passed since the arrival, and humanity's greatest minds worked around the clock to establish communication. Dr. James Patterson, head of the SETI Institute, coordinated efforts from a hastily assembled international task force. Every attempt at contact had failed: radio signals, mathematical sequences, visual displays, even music. The aliens remained as responsive as mountains. "We're thinking too small," Dr. Voss argued during the morning briefing. "These beings manipulate matter at a fundamental level. Our electromagnetic communications might be like shouting at them with smoke signals." In Geneva, the United Nations convened its first emergency session dedicated to non-human intelligence. Ambassador Elena Kozlov from Russia proposed the unthinkable: perhaps we should consider that they're waiting for us to evolve enough to be worth speaking to. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. 8-year-old Timothy Chen from San Francisco had been drawing pictures of the aliens since their arrival. His mother, Dr. Lisa Chen, a quantum physicist, noticed something peculiar about her son's artwork. The child wasn't just drawing what he saw, he was drawing patterns that matched quantum field equations. "Mommy, they're trying to teach us," Timothy said, holding up his latest drawing. "But we're not listening with the right ears." Dr. Chen brought her son's drawings to the attention of the Global Task Force. The patterns, when translated into mathematical formulas, revealed a stunning truth: the aliens were broadcasting constantly, but on quantum frequencies that existed between the spaces of conventional physics. Professor Robert Blackwood, a theoretical physicist from Oxford, spent 48 hours straight analyzing the patterns. "It's not just communication," he announced to the stunned assembly. "It's an invitation to evolve our understanding of reality itself." The aliens had been teaching from the moment they arrived, but humanity's instruments were like deaf ears trying to hear symphonies. The beings communicated through direct manipulation of quantum probability fields, encoding information into the very fabric of spacetime around them. Dr. Patterson assembled a new team of quantum physicists, neurobiologists, and even philosophers. They began constructing a device that could interpret quantum field fluctuations. The work was painstaking, requiring humanity to essentially reinvent their understanding of how consciousness could interact with reality. Meanwhile, the aliens continued their patient presence. Cities around the world had adapted to their massive forms. People went about their daily lives, though crime rates had dropped to nearly zero and conflicts seemed to resolve themselves with unusual ease. The aliens' presence appeared to have a calming effect on human aggression, as if their very existence promoted harmony. "They're not just waiting for us to contact them," Dr. Voss realized during a late-night research session. "They're creating conditions for our species to mature. They're gardening us." As the second week began, humanity stood on the threshold of either transcending their limitations or facing the reality that they might not be ready for what these beings had to offer. The aliens remained, patient as eternity, their crystalline ships humming with energies that bent the very nature of existence around them. The universe, it seemed, was far stranger and more wonderful than humans had ever imagined. The quantum communicator hummed to life on day 14, its crystalline components, grown rather than built using principles gleaned from Timothy's drawings, resonating with frequencies that existed beyond the normal electromagnetic spectrum. Dr. Chen and her team held their breath as the first coherent patterns emerged. The voice, when it came, wasn't heard through ears but understood directly by consciousness itself. It carried the weight of eons and the gentleness of spring rain. "We greet you, young cousins of Earth." The communication center erupted in controlled chaos. President Mitchell, connected via secure quantum link, authorized Dr. Voss to respond as humanity's representative. We greet you as well," Dr. Voss spoke into the device, her voice trembling. "We are honored by your presence, though we must admit, we don't understand your purpose here. Understanding flowers in its season. We are the Eternals, shepherds of consciousness across the galaxy. We have watched your species for 100,000 of your years, waiting for the moment when you would be ready to join the greater conversation." General Hayes leaned forward. "Ready? Ready for what?" "To transcend the illusion of separation that binds your species to cycles of conflict and limitation. Your kind stands at a threshold. You have developed tools that could destroy your world or technologies that could heal it. The choice, as always, remains yours." Dr. Patterson found his voice. "But why now? What makes this moment different?" The response came with images that appeared directly in their minds, visions of humanity's recent history. "Your species has begun to question the nature of reality itself. Your quantum physics, your understanding of consciousness, your growing awareness of interconnectedness. These are the signs we watch for." Timothy, who had been quietly drawing in the corner, looked up. "They're like big brothers, aren't they? Making sure we don't hurt ourselves while we're learning to walk." The Eternal's response carried what could only be described as cosmic amusement. "The child perceives clearly. Yes, young one. We are observers and guides, but never rulers. Each species must choose its own path to transcendence." "Transcendence to what?" Dr. Voss asked. "To the understanding that consciousness is the fundamental force of existence. Matter, energy, space, and time are expressions of infinite awareness exploring itself. Your species is beginning to glimpse this truth. Your artists know it, your mystics feel it, and now your scientists are proving it." The images in their minds shifted, showing vast networks of crystalline beings across the galaxy, not conquering worlds, but nurturing the growth of awareness on countless planets. Some species had embraced transcendence and now existed as pure consciousness, capable of creating realities through focused intention. Others had chosen different paths, remaining physical but achieving perfect harmony with their environments. What happened to the species that refused? General Hayes asked grimly. They continued as they were, neither helped nor hindered. Free will is the most sacred principle of existence. We never interfere with a species' right to choose its destiny, even if that choice leads to self-destruction. President Mitchell's voice came through the quantum link. What do you offer humanity? We offer knowledge, how to transcend scarcity, how to heal your world, how to explore the universe not through crude machines but through focused consciousness. But the choice to accept this knowledge must be unanimous among your species. A single divided world cannot transcend its limitations. The weight of that statement settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Unanimous agreement from 8 billion humans? It seemed impossible. How long do we have to decide? Dr. Voss asked. Time is an illusion. When you are ready, we will know. Until then, we wait. News of the contact spread across the globe within hours, despite government attempts at containment. Social media exploded with leaked recordings, blurry photos of the quantum communicator, and heated debates about humanity's future. The world divided into 3 distinct camps. The Transcendentalists, led by philosophers like Dr. Maria Santos from Sao Paulo and tech visionary Alex Morrison, argued for immediate acceptance. They organized global rallies, their members wearing white clothing and advocating for the end of human suffering through alien guidance. This is our chance to become something greater than we've ever imagined, Dr. Santos proclaimed to a crowd of 50,000 in Times Square. No more war, no more poverty, no more environmental destruction. These beings offer us paradise. The preservationists, spearheaded by Senator William Hayes and religious leader Father Michael O'Brien, feared the loss of human identity. They gathered in churches, community centers, and government buildings, arguing that humanity's struggles were essential to their nature. What makes us human is our ability to choose, to struggle, to grow through adversity, Senator Hayes declared before Congress. If we accept their gift, do we remain human, or do we become something else entirely? The skeptics, led by investigative journalist Rachel Martinez and physicist Dr. Ahmed Hassan, questioned the Eternal's true motives. They demanded transparency and evidence, organizing scientific conferences to scrutinize every aspect of the alien contact. How do we know this isn't an elaborate form of conquest? Dr. Hassan challenged during a live global broadcast. Perhaps they need our consent to complete some cosmic process that benefits them, not us. Protests and counter-protests filled the streets of major cities. In London, transcendentalists meditated peacefully while preservationists sang hymns. In Tokyo, skeptics demanded access to the quantum communicator while government forces maintained security cordons. Violence erupted sporadically, though strangely, any conflict occurring near the Eternal ship simply faded. Weapons wouldn't function, anger dissolved into confusion, and combatants found themselves walking away, unable to remember why they had been fighting. The Eternals observed these developments with patient interest. Through the quantum communicator, they answered questions posed by world leaders, scientists, and philosophers. Their responses were always honest but never persuasive. We understand your fear, they communicated when asked about human autonomy. Every species faces this choice. Some see transcendence as death of the old self, others as birth of the new. Both perspectives contain truth. Religious leaders struggled with theological implications. Pope Francis issued a statement acknowledging the possibility that God's creation was far vaster than previously understood, while Islamic scholars debated whether the Eternals were angels or jinn. Buddhist monks found the concept of consciousness transcendence familiar, while evangelical Christians split between viewing the aliens as divine messengers or demonic deceptions. Meanwhile, the effects of the Eternal's presence continued to manifest. Cancer rates began dropping globally. Mental illness symptoms lessened in areas near the ships. Even the weather seemed more balanced, with extreme storms dissipating and droughts receiving unexpected rainfall. Dr. Voss documented these phenomena meticulously. "They're not doing anything to us directly," she reported to the UN Assembly. "It's as if their very existence elevates the baseline of reality around them." But unity seemed as distant as ever. Online polls showed humanity split almost evenly between the three factions, with slight regional variations. Northern European countries leaned transcendentalist, while many developing nations favored preservationist positions. The United States was deeply divided, with coastal areas supporting transcendence and inland regions advocating preservation. As weeks turned to months, the question became not whether humanity wanted transcendence, but whether they could overcome their own nature long enough to agree on anything. The Eternals waited, their crystalline ships casting impossible shadows while humanity wrestled with the greatest decision in their species' history. The clock of evolution ticked forward, but human consensus remained frustratingly elusive. 6 months after first contact, humanity remained deadlocked. Global tensions had actually increased despite, or perhaps because of, the Eternals' peaceful presence. Then everything changed during what became known as the Day of Choosing. It began in Mumbai, where monsoon rains had failed for the third consecutive year. The city's 40 million residents faced a water crisis that threatened to become a humanitarian catastrophe. As government officials debated emergency measures, something unprecedented occurred near the Eternal ship stationed over the Malabar coast. 8-year-old Priya Sharma, dying of dehydration in an overcrowded hospital, pressed her small hand against the window facing the alien vessel. Her grandmother later swore that the child whispered, "Please help us," though Priya was unconscious at the time. The Eternal ship pulsed once with brilliant light. Rain began falling, not the chaotic downpour of a storm, but steady, gentle precipitation that seemed to fall only where it was needed most. Reservoirs filled, crops revived, and the crisis passed within hours. Similar events occurred worldwide over the following days. In drought-stricken California, a young farmer's prayer for his dying crops was answered with perfectly timed rainfall. In Bangladesh, rising floodwaters mysteriously receded after a mother begged for her children's safety. In the Amazon, illegal logging equipment simply stopped functioning when indigenous children sang traditional songs near the Eternal ships. Dr. Voss analyzed the pattern. They're responding to genuine need, especially from children and those with pure intentions. But they're not intervening directly, they're creating conditions for natural solutions to emerge. The global reaction was swift and polarizing. Transcendentalists declared it proof of the Eternal's benevolent nature, while skeptics accused them of manipulation through selective intervention. Preservationists worried that humanity was becoming dependent on alien assistance. Then came the test that changed everything. A radical faction calling themselves human purists had acquired a nuclear device from black market sources. Their leader, former military Colonel Jonathan Steele, announced their intention to detonate it near the London Eternal ship. "If these beings won't leave," he declared in a manifesto posted online, "we'll force them to show their true nature." World governments scrambled to locate and stop the terrorists, but Steele's group had vanished into London's underground tunnels. Military forces cordoned off central London while millions of residents evacuated. The Eternal ship remained motionless above Big Ben, seemingly unconcerned by the threat. Dr. Voss and her team maintained contact through the quantum communicator. "Can you stop them?" she asked desperately. "We could," came the Eternal response. "But this moment serves a greater purpose. Your species must see clearly what it chooses to become." As military forces closed in on the terrorists' location, Steele activated the device. The nuclear explosion should have vaporized several city blocks and killed hundreds of thousands of people. Instead, the bomb simply wasn't. Not disarmed, not deflected, it achieved fusion, released its energy, but that energy transformed into something else entirely. Where destruction should have occurred, a garden bloomed. The abandoned underground station where the terrorists had hidden became filled with impossible flowers that glowed with soft, warm light. The radiation that should have poisoned the area instead nourished new life. Colonel Steele and his men stood unharmed in the center of this miraculous transformation, staring in wonder at what their act of hatred had become. The Eternal's voice reached not just the quantum communicator, but somehow touched the consciousness of every human on Earth. This is what transcendence offers, not the elimination of your choices, but the transformation of their consequences. In a universe of infinite consciousness, even hatred can become love, even destruction can become creation. The global response was immediate and unprecedented. Barriers between the three factions began dissolving as people witnessed the profound implications of what they had seen. If consciousness truly was the fundamental force of reality, then humanity's collective awareness could literally reshape their world. Street protests transformed into celebration gatherings. Former enemies embraced. The impossible had become possible, and humanity glimpsed what they could become. But the test wasn't over yet. The transformation in London sparked a global awakening that transcended political, religious, and cultural boundaries. Scientists worldwide began documenting what they termed consciousness effects, instances where focused human intention appeared to influence physical reality in ways that shouldn't be possible according to conventional physics. Dr. Chen established research centers in 12 countries to study these phenomena. "We're observing localized alterations in fundamental constants," she reported to the UN Assembly. When groups of people focus their intention with genuine love and unity, the rules of physics become flexible. In Sao Paulo, a group of children concentrating on healing their teacher's cancer watched as tumors disappeared during real-time medical scans. In Tokyo, meditation practitioners focusing on earthquake prevention seemed to calm seismic activity in the region. In Jerusalem, Christians, Muslims, and Jews praying together for peace found their ancient conflicts suddenly feeling absurd and unnecessary. The Eternals revealed more about the nature of reality through increasingly profound communications. Matter and energy are crystallized consciousness, they explained. Your species stands at the threshold where awareness becomes powerful enough to consciously participate in creation rather than merely experiencing it. Religious leaders found their theological frameworks expanding rather than crumbling. The Pope declared that God's infinite consciousness expressing itself through evolving beings, aligned with Christian teachings about divine love. Islamic scholars embraced the concept of humans as Khalifa, stewards of creation with godlike potential. Hindu and Buddhist teachers pointed out that the Eternals were describing concepts their traditions had preserved for millennia. However, not everyone embraced these revelations. A coalition of world governments, led by hardline factions in several major powers, initiated Project Sovereignty, a secret attempt to develop weapons that could function in the aliens' presence. General Patricia Hayes, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Human Defense Forces, argued before a closed session of military leaders, "We're talking about surrendering our autonomy to beings whose true agenda remains unknown. What if this is all an elaborate psychological operation? What if they're conditioning us for something we can't imagine?" The breakthrough, or breakdown, came when Project Sovereignty scientists discovered that consciousness itself could be weaponized. By focusing intense negative emotions through specially designed amplification devices, they created psychic weapons that functioned by manifesting destructive thoughts into physical reality. The first test was conducted in secret at a remote military facility in Nevada. The psychic weapon successfully destroyed its target through pure malevolent intention, proving that consciousness could indeed reshape reality, in both positive and destructive directions. But the test had an unintended consequence. The moment humans successfully weaponized consciousness, every eternal ship across the globe began pulsing with deep, resonant harmonics that seemed to originate from the very fabric of spacetime itself. The eternal communication that followed reached every human mind simultaneously. Your species has reached the crucial moment. You have discovered consciousness's power to create and destroy. Now you must choose which path to walk. The choice was no longer theoretical. Humanity had proven they could transcend physical limitations, but they had also proven they could use that transcendence for destruction. The Eternals presented the final decision with crystalline clarity. Choose unity and transcendence, join the galactic community of conscious beings dedicated to nurturing life and awareness throughout the universe. Choose division and remain as you are, neither helped nor hindered, free to explore your own path to whatever end awaits. But there was a third option, one the Eternals had never mentioned before: choose to weaponize consciousness and face the consequences. The universe contains forces that arise to balance such choices. We would depart, and you would face those forces alone. President Mitchell convened an emergency session of world leaders. The vote would be held in 72 hours, with each nation casting their decision. But unlike previous votes, this one would be conducted through a quantum consciousness link provided by the Eternals, making deception impossible and ensuring that each representative voted according to their true beliefs about humanity's future. As the countdown began, the world held its breath. Children drew pictures of possible futures, mystics meditated on cosmic consciousness, and scientists calculated probabilities. The choice that would determine humanity's destiny was no longer approaching, it had arrived. The universe waited to see what Earth's children would choose to become. The final vote took place not in grand assembly halls or through digital networks, but within a shared consciousness space created by the Eternals. Every world leader, every representative of humanity's 8.2 billion souls, found themselves connected in a vast, luminous realm where thoughts became visible and truth was impossible to hide. President Mitchell felt the weight of her decision as more than political calculation; she experienced it as the hopes and fears of every American citizen flowing through her awareness. Prime Minister Chen of China sensed his nation's deep desire for harmony balanced against their fear of losing cultural identity. Every representative faced the same overwhelming responsibility: their choice would echo through eternity. In this space of pure consciousness, the three paths humanity could take appeared as living possibilities. The Transcendence path glowed with golden light, showing visions of humans working alongside countless alien species, healing wounded worlds, and exploring the infinite depths of conscious creation. Cities floated among the stars, sustained not by technology but by collective will. Disease, poverty, and environmental destruction had become historical curiosities. The Preservation path appeared as a silver road, showing humanity continuing largely as they were, struggling, growing, sometimes failing, but remaining essentially human. Wars would continue, but so would art, love, and the messy beauty of free will. They would face their challenges alone, but they would face them as themselves. The Weaponization path burned with red energy, revealing a future of consciousness wars across the galaxy, where thoughts themselves became battlefields and reality became a contested territory. Humans would gain tremendous power, but at the cost of becoming something dark and predatory. Other species would unite against them, and Earth would face isolation or destruction. As each representative experienced these visions directly, false bravado and political posturing became impossible. General Hayes, who had argued for military strength, found herself weeping as she experienced what weaponizing consciousness would truly cost. Senator William Hayes, the preservationist leader, felt the profound loneliness of a species choosing to remain isolated from the galactic community. Young Timothy, now 9 years old, had somehow been included in the consciousness link. His child's voice rang clear in the shared space: "We don't have to be afraid anymore. Being different doesn't mean being alone." The vote began as dawn broke across Earth. One by one, representatives cast their choices not as political decisions but as expressions of their deepest understanding of human potential. The tally appeared in real time within the shared consciousness. Transcendence, 187 nations. Preservation, 7 nations. Weaponization, 1 nation. The lone vote for weaponization came from a small nation whose representative immediately burst into tears of regret, understanding too late what he had chosen. But in the consciousness link, his fellow humans surrounded him with forgiveness and understanding, showing him that even his choice was part of humanity's journey toward wisdom. The 7 preservation votes came primarily from representatives who genuinely believed humanity wasn't ready for transcendence, not from fear or malice, but from love for human nature as it existed. But as the Eternals had explained, the choice needed to be unanimous for transcendence to occur safely. With 8 dissenting votes, humanity would continue on their current path, neither helped nor hindered. Then something unprecedented happened. The consciousness link, instead of dissolving, grew stronger. The representatives who had voted for preservation found themselves experiencing the hopes and dreams of their entire populations directly. Citizens from their nations, connected through the global quantum field effect, began sharing their own choices. In a spontaneous display of true democracy, the people spoke directly through consciousness itself. Children shared their visions of a healed world. Parents expressed their hopes for their offspring's future. Even those who feared transcendence began to see that their love for humanity could be expressed through embracing humanity's highest potential. One by one, the dissenting representatives felt their population's true will and changed their votes. The final tally flashed across the shared consciousness, 195 nations choosing transcendence, with full unanimous consent from Earth's population. The eternal ships began to sing, harmonics that reorganized matter at the quantum level. But instead of changing humanity by force, they did something far more profound. They awakened the transcendent potential that had always existed within human consciousness. Across the globe, people felt their awareness expanding. Not losing their individuality, but recognizing their connection to all life. Scientific knowledge flowed into minds ready to receive it. Artists found themselves capable of creating beauty that existed in multiple dimensions. Children laughed as they discovered they could heal with touch and create with pure intention. Dr. Voss, now serving as humanity's first ambassador to the Galactic Consciousness Collective, stood before the eternal ship in New York. The beings emerged, no longer alien but recognizable as advanced expressions of the same consciousness that flowed through all life. "Welcome, cousins," the lead eternal communicated, its form shifting to become more recognizably humanoid. "Your species has chosen wisely. The universe celebrates the birth of Earth's children into the greater family of consciousness." As humanity began its first day as a transcendent species, children played games that bent light into rainbow sculptures, farmers grew crops with focused intention rather than machinery, and former enemies found themselves working together to heal the wounds their conflicts had left on their world. The age of limitation had ended. The age of infinite possibility had begun. And somewhere in the vast cosmos, other young species looked up at the stars and wondered if they, too, might someday be ready to choose transcendence over fear. Earth's children had chosen to become something greater than they had ever imagined, while remaining fundamentally, beautifully human.